Words are attached to things that matter. Sometimes there are feelings that you have trouble, to which you have trouble applying words. And sometimes those are very confusing feelings, and it takes thoughts and prayer to figure that all out. There are words that are really, really important. If you're a cop and you are in a confrontation with a group of civilians, the word gun means go time. Someone has a gun. Gun. It's one word, and it's said very quickly. And every cop knows what gun means. It means you are about to get shot. And different police departments have different protocols for gun. There's words, of course, that the left, largely the left, and particularly the sexual left, has worked very hard to destroy, such as love. Love is not one thing. Biblically, there's at least 4 kinds of love, probably 5, and they all matter. They're all important. They all mean something. Clearly, the love I have for my daughter is different than the love I have for my wife. They are different things, and they are vitally important to separate. The love I have for my male friends and some female friends is different than the love I have for God. It better be. The love for God had better be all-encompassing, as his love for us is. In the Bible, it's called hesed. It's hard to say, hesed. Words, as Rush Limbaugh once said, and you know what? It's interesting. Rush said this in a commercial. This is how good he was. He said, words mean things. They tell people about your background, education, even your intelligence. And he was doing an ad for a company that helped you speak better English, construct better sentences, better than the ones I just did. So when everything is one thing, nothing is everything, is anything. So for instance, as I've said many times in the program, if you tell your kids everything is hot, nothing is hot, therefore there will be no warning when something is actually hot. Or in a family where someone finally blows their top, you know what? If you keep doing that, you're going to get a spanking. And spanking never happens. The word means nothing until one day the parent cracks and the spanking is a beating. Words are attached to important things. Our government is making sure that that is less and less true. Why? Because when they can appropriate a word, they can appropriate truth. We can take this down to many, many levels. Obviously, the pretending men are women is one of them. But so was this. Pretending that cases meant people were sick. That was never true. In the COVID instance, a case meant a positive test. It did not mean that anybody was sick. But when they appropriated a case and made it appear to mean ill, look what they were able to do. The government is playing that game where everything they don't like is a domestic terror op. And in the era of independent journalists, and in this case, I'm going to do Elon Musk the respect of calling his platform X. I don't normally do that because to me it's Twitter, probably always will be. It's just me being stubborn, I guess. I think X is a stupid name. There is a guy who calls himself Shu Samasor, and he has some information for us. An anti-terrorism brief was held on Fort Bragg today, where they listed several pro-life organizations as terrorist organizations. The slide you see here followed right after a slide about ISIS, a terror group in the Middle East. The organizations labeled by the Army as terror groups organizations include National Right to Life and Operation Rescue. They also included a screenshot of a license plate with I am for IT, which is a plate many pro-life citizens put on their car, which implies normal citizens as terrorists if they display this plate. The slide goes on to mention activities in which organizations participate, which include being pro-life, opposing Roe versus Wade, demonstrating and protesting a First Amendment protected right, truth displays, and picketing. They also falsely attribute the bombing of abortion clinics to National Right to Life. Keep in mind they're not labeling them as extremist organizations, which would still be crazy, but as terrorist organizations. The military and Department of Defense are insanely out of control. Service members are being indoctrinated to view pro-life groups as the enemy. Yes, they are. What are they really being indoctrinated with? What does terror mean? Whatever we say it does. When one thing means everything, nothing means anything. What the goal is here is to be the keepers of truth. When you appropriate the meaning of words to say, well, that's terrorism. Why? Because we called it terrorism. But yesterday it wasn't terrorism, but today it is. You render yourself the same as the hypnotized people in the Mockingbird media newsrooms. Think about this. When Zach Abraham and I did a show last week together, we went through this insane contention that Casey, what's her name? Is it Casey Hunt? I forget her name. She doesn't matter that much to me. No offense, she just doesn't. At CNN, who said that the Bible contains pornography. Remember that? The Bible doesn't contain any pornography, but she said it as a fact. Why does she think that? Because she must. In order to interact in the world in which she lives, she must think those things. You can see the same thing throughout Washington, D.C. There was the protest in Washington, D.C., the original Tea Party protests. And I should ask my wife for permission to use her videos from that. She was there on that first day when people drove from around the country. I should ask her permission to get this video of this old man. And I'm not being pejorative. He was in his 80s. Drove all the way up overnight from Louisiana in a walker. He came to the Capitol on the Mall in a walker. She asked him why he was against Obamacare and what Barack Obama was doing. He was eloquent and precise, and he had deep, deep sets of information. When I took that back to the Republican National Committee, and my wife got me in touch with Amy Kramer, who was one of the key organizers of the Tea Party, and Amy emailed me. I said, oh my gosh, I would love to have you in the building. I would love to. Let's arrange this. I put out a note to the Republican National Committee leadership. Amy Kramer's here. She's helped organize this. I'm inviting her in. Who would like to come and meet with her to learn how she did this and how her team got this to happen? No one wanted that. No one would take the meeting. Why? Well, she wasn't on our team. What did team mean? It meant people who exist to get Republicans elected. What is a Republican? A Republican is anything they say is a Republican. Susan Snow is a Republican, just as much as Rand Paul is a Republican. The word Republican meant something once. It didn't then. Now, in point of fact, one person did take that meeting, and he rushed back in to chat with her, and that was the chief of staff, Ken, who was, in fact, very impressed with her, thankful for what she did. But this goes further. During that same time, that protest that week, they were profound, they were huge, they were just stellar, they were peaceful. I went up to the leadership team and was leadership meeting one morning. Leadership meetings were every morning. And I went into the leadership meeting, and a very nice gentleman, incredibly nice, kind man. He is a fixture of Washington, D.C. He said to me, did you see these insane people who want to audit our Federal Reserve? Kevin, what's wrong with that? He goes, are you kidding me? That's our nation's banking system. They want to audit it? What does audit mean? Audit means to supervise, to investigate, to measure. He thought it insane that we would want to test, to measure, to investigate our, quote, nation's banking system as the people who are, contend to own it. You can boil this down even further. And I know this is Creature from Jekyll Island stuff, but many people don't know this. Is the Federal Reserve federal? No. Is it a reserve? No. When the party seizes words and turns them into gibberish, they are seizing the ability to create truth. So what do we do? What is truth? Truth is not a thing. It's a person, a personage, an existence, an eternity. God is truth. Anything else, you're dealing with not truth, but emotion. For instance, The people who leave this hearing or this training by the military teaching them that pro-life groups are terrorists, how do they feel about pro-life groups? Well, since they're in the military, you would hope they don't feel afraid, but they feel what? Animus? Opposition? Diligence? A sense of needing to be vigilant around people like that? When they see a pro-life license plate, what feelings do they get? Oh, that's someone who means his country ill. That's someone I've been told to watch out for. That's someone who I'm being prepped to view as someone I may need to do what to. Now, think about this. It took decades to build up the hatred necessary for many of the worst of the cultural revolutions. Decades. Mao didn't one day say that the bosses of China should be beheaded, and it happened. In France, it wasn't one day of, hey, they hate us, the royalty needs to be beheaded, and let's do that now. It didn't take one day. It took ages to build up that animus, and much of it, was probably well-earned, not being taken to the gallows, not being assassinated. God says, do not murder. Prepping the military environment to create feelings of, if not fear, but animus for natural expressions of free speech among the citizens group does what? The feelings towards the individuals, but then the feelings towards something else, speech itself. The crimes these groups have committed is speech. There was a great meme that went out, and I think we talked about this with Zach. I think I mentioned this. It compared the criminal fine that Boeing paid to the fines that President Trump and Alex Jones are paying. And I want to repeat that because, again, when one thing means everything, nothing really means anything. Think some more about this. Every single Republican is a Nazi. They're all Nazis. They're all racists. They all want to destroy the country. They all hate truth. They all hate children. They all hate immigrants. And the people who are Democrats are all on the side of what? Caring and fairness. They're all on the side of what? Civil rights. They're all on the side of what? Providing for people. Think again about the meaning of words. When Joe Biden began his mental decline, we were told it was what? He was stuttering. He'd always been a stutterer. Really? Is there any evidence for that? Nope. Doesn't matter because we said he's always been a stutterer. Then it became this. Well, what about President Trump? Wait a minute. I thought whataboutisms were illegal. You guys told us no whataboutisms. Now, given the press conference last week, let's think about the meaning of words. Again, they do everything they can to normalize president. They did everything they could to normalize safe election, safest, most secure election in history. Words that they seized. How do we know it was safe? How do we know it was secure minutes after the polls closed? Well, because we said so. Remember this moment during the press conference?
My commander-in-chief, the chief of staff of the military, as well as the Secretary of Defense and our intelligence people.
So let's pause and play this again. And if you're on the video service, watch the face of this man. And I know this happened last week, but watch the face of this man. And think again about the word president. Think again about the word commander-in-chief. Think again about the words supervisor, auditing, controlling, measuring. Is he capable of this? Listen and or watch again.
I'm following the advice of my commander-in-chief, the chief of staff of the military, as well as the Secretary of Defense and our intelligence people.
That is a great bit of effort that Biden's putting into a reset of the brain. That's not a misspeak. That is a misthink. And we are told that this is the guy who is still quite capable of a 2 a.m. war room decision. A moment like that, take it as an airline pilot. An airline pilot who is landing an airplane and he is 15 feet from the ground A mental situation like that, at a speed like that, where he has to reset his brain, could be the difference between the wings going 15% to the left and the plane going into the ground, or the wings staying where they should be, level. The nation isn't likely to have a 15-second emergency, but it's likely to have a 15-second decision. And the brain freeze like that at that moment, that could be horrible. It was a conspiracy theory that racism was being taught in the schools. What's the title of the program again? When everything is one thing, nothing is anything. If everything is hot, nothing is hot. If everything is dangerous, nothing is dangerous. If everything is a conspiracy theory, nothing is a conspiracy theory. The effort to control truth is what this is about.